Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very exciting press conference. I'm Michelle Hinchey, State Senator for the 46th District, representing all of Greene and Montgomery counties and good portions of Schenectady, Albany, and Ulster counties. We are here today because the way that our food is grown affects all of us. Whether you live in upstate New York, Long Island, New York City, the way that that food is produced and what you eat and where it's produced has a direct and profound impact on your life and your future. Over 95% of our food comes straight from the soil, and how healthy that soil is determines the quality of our food. Healthy soil gives us a stable food supply, clean water to drink, clean air to breathe, diverse wildlife, and the critical ability to fight climate change, which threatens all of those things and more. For me personally, soil health is incredibly important because it combines three of my favorite things: the food system, our environment, and our farms. Today, we've brought together a diverse and robust coalition of agriculture and environmental experts who agree that improving soil health is one of the most important climate solutions of our time. It is a solution that will deliver win-win outcomes for our farming communities and for our planet. And the path to that solution is the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act. If you count, you will see 27 national and statewide organizations on this poster right here. These groups represent people. They represent farmers, researchers, scientists, and environmentalists who all recognize the paramount importance of building climate resilience communities through agriculture. This bill is a huge step forward toward protecting New York from the worst impacts of climate change by providing pathways for environmental experts and our farmers to work hand in hand. This is one of the most natural but underinvested partnerships in our time, and we need to be doing everything we can to bring our environmental and agricultural communities together to benefit our planet. New York agriculture is a core part of the solution in fighting climate change in our state, and the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act is the legislation that will truly solidify this essential partnership, bringing New York soil health laws into the 21st century standards. A few highlights of this bill: for the first time in state law, we are defining soil health and soil health practices, which will lay the groundwork for future policy. We will establish 3 programs through Ag and Markets: a soil health initiative that will work with farmers in urban, suburban, and rural communities to adopt soil health practices and optimize soil health; a climate resiliency initiative led by Ag and Markets, Cornell, and other stakeholders who will develop voluntary soil health standards for farmers to use as a roadmap to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions on their farms; and a research initiative that will make best practices on soil health readily available to farmers and creates a mechanism for research funding as funds become available. I'm incredibly proud to sponsor this bill, and even more proud to work with my colleagues in government to get this over the finish line. First and foremost, with my colleague and fellow Agriculture Chair, Assemblymember Lupardo, who has been a leader in this space from the beginning. I'd like to invite the Assemblymember to join us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you for putting this together, and thank you for the advocates who are here and some of my colleagues. A very special shout out to Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett, who helped me understand the importance of soil health with her pioneering work on carbon farming in the Hudson Valley. And I think she's going to say a few words about that. So this entire bill is based on the simple proposition that soil health is important to state government, it's important to state legislators, it's a guiding principle in our policymaking. We're putting a line, we're drawing a line. We're saying, as we approach agriculture, as we approach reaching our climate goals, that not only should agriculture be at the table, but agriculture will in fact play a very important role. So that's the proposition. Soil health is important. Soil health is important because it grows healthier food. Soil health is important because it reduces erosion, because it sequesters carbon. Unhealthy soil does the opposite. Unhealthy soil is over-farmed, lacking in nutrients, promoting erosion. So we're here today to say there's a big difference between soil and dirt. We're for soil, we're for healthy soil, and we want to promote food that's grown in healthy soil. But for me personally, I am trying to make a point extremely clear. Agriculture has a role to play in achieving our state's climate goals. We want to be at the table, we are at the table, but going forward, we're going to insist on it. We're going to insist that agriculture is consulted, and agriculture is very, very proud to have this coalition behind us, as well as the work we will do going forward. Everyone knows how I feel about this. This is a first step. This is a first step so that we can make this point clear, but going forward, we're going to have to provide supports for farmers to adopt these practices, to support cooperative extension, to be out in the field and share stories, farmer to farmer, about how this has been successful. We're going to take this first step that will eventually result in supports for farmers to make these transitions. I know that, we all know that, but this is the place we're beginning. So let's support soil. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Next, I would like to bring up a true champion, as Assemblymember Lupardo said, a true champion for soil health. She really has led the way in this space over the last number of years, and we are so happy to have her join us today. Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Assemblymember Lupardo. Two fierce advocates for agriculture. We are so lucky in New York State right now to have these two incredible women leading the charge on agriculture. And I am honored to be working with them. The soil bills right now, the soil policy right now in New York State dates to 1938, to the Dust Bowl. So anything that we're looking at to deal with remediation or regenerative farming or sustainable agriculture is not even in the mix. So it is so important that we pass this legislation not only to start moving forward and start doing the things that we really need to do in New York State to protect our farmland, to protect our agricultural economy, but also to make sure that people understand that healthy soils are connected to clean air and connected to clean water in an integral way that makes this very much about climate change. And that the carbon farming initiative that we are working on, the pilot in the Hudson Valley, and the legislation that I have been pushing and advancing over the last few years, is very much about what we do as a state to reach our climate goals, to address clean energy, to take advantage of the restoring the restorative qualities that trees and forests and working lands bring to the mix. We are all committed to the goals that we have, but there are a number of different ways that we can be reaching them. And making sure that healthy soils are part of the mix is critical. And I thank our sponsors, and I look forward to getting this bill passed and getting the governor to sign it, hopefully in the very near future. Thank you all.
Thank you, Assemblymember. And we have, as we've said, an incredible coalition of advocates and experts standing with us in this fight. And I'd like to bring up Elizabeth Walters, Deputy Director of Public Policy at the New York Farm Bureau.
Thank you all for being here today. It is my honor to be here. We really thank Assemblywoman Lupardo and Senator Hinchey for all their work on this. To all my colleagues behind us, our farmers across the state, getting this across the finish line is of utmost importance. Our farmers are in the front line of climate change, and we look forward to being able to continue to advance soil health, to make them more resilient, to make our food system more resilient. New York farmers, as I said, are very innovative. They've been taking this on head-on for years. We have seen a 37% increase in soil health practices, cover cropping, over the past, from the 2012 to 17 census. We are seeing vast improvement in these areas, but we need to do more. We need support of legislature, of the governor, of our federal partners, and all of the partner groups here on this poster here today. According to Cornell University, evidence shows that cover croppers make a big difference in crop performance and resiliency. Both excess rain and drought are improved. Resiliency is improved. Challenges do exist here in New York, and this is why we need this support. We have many microclimates, we have a short growing season, so we need this help for our farmers. This legislation builds on the work that is being done, and I am so proud to be standing with this diverse group here today and all of our farmers. Thank you very much for bringing attention to this very important issue.
Thank you very much. I would next like to bring up Andy Bicking, Director of Government Relations and Public Policy at Siena Cutson.
Thank you, Senator, and congratulations for your great work on the bill, as well as Assemblymember Lupardo and Barrett for your incredible leadership on this legislation. Improving soil health in working farms is perhaps the single most effective strategy we have to both advance farm viability, conserve soil and water resources, and address a changing climate. And all of this happens by preparing farms and farmers for severe weather events and also for strategies that help them sequester carbon. This work is so critical at this time. I think it's no surprise for any of us when you look around the state and you see the incredible service that our farmers are providing, feeding all of us. And then you also begin to understand the really challenging circumstances that they are working under, both because of the stresses of a changing climate, economic conditions, and so forth. As Assemblymember Dede mentioned, the section of laws that this bill is amending dates back literally to the Dust Bowl and was amended only briefly in the 1980s and early 1990s to address water quality issues. We're now taking the leadership from the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which has set the goal of an 85% reduction in carbon by the year 2050, and beginning to think about the role that agriculture can have in solving the climate crisis while continuing to support our farm families around the state. This work is essential, and it's so important that we're recognizing agriculture. Agriculture is perhaps the only industry in the state that can achieve a net negative carbon emissions scenario, both by reducing their own emissions and improving soil health, which is a proven strategy for sequestering carbon. This triple bottom line of economics, water quality, and soil conservation and climate must be advanced. We are supportive of the bill's sponsors for their work and call upon the Senate to take the final step and pass this legislation so we can send it to the governor's office. Thank you.
Thank you. I would next like to bring up Samantha Levy, New York Policy Manager at American Farmland Trust.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. So we're facing dual crises right now of the pandemic and climate change. More people are thinking about where their food is coming from and the impacts of their choices on the environment, as the senator mentioned. Meanwhile, on farm for years, our farmers have been quietly working to adopt regenerative practices that improve soil health and supply us with the food that we need while minimizing their impact on the environment. We've seen evidence of this, impressive increases between 2012 and 2017 that Elizabeth mentioned, in planting cover crops and adopting no-till practices that improve soil health, but we're still far from our full potential. American Farmland Trust, the organization that I work for, is the nation's leading farmland conservation organization. If you've seen this sticker, this is us. No farms, no food. We've been working with farmers for years to adopt soil health practices in the field in New York and across the country. And we've seen firsthand the benefits to the farmer, including case studies that we have put out. Bianca has some copies back there, and this is one of them. Case studies showing that soil health practices yield a net increase in income per acre. And there is one farm that we profiled in Livingston, New York, that showed a 135% return on investment by adopting soil health practices due to reduced input costs. It also improves farmers' resilience to extreme weather, droughts and floods, can increase yields over time, and reduces soil erosion, which is critical to continuing to feed us over time. And it has positive benefits for the community. Less nutrients running off the farm into our waterways, increase in the water that fields can absorb during heavy rain events that we're seeing more of, and as has been pointed out, increased carbon sequestration in soils. The IPCC says that it is essential to staying below 2 degrees Celsius warming levels, is drawing carbon out from the atmosphere and putting it back into the earth. Bottom line, improving soil health is critical to New Yorkers. As President Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, a nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. But even with all this potential, barriers to adoption on farm remain. Farmers need good information. They need technical assistance and support to manage the risk of making the change. The good news is we have the raw materials. We have farmer leaders innovating and showing the way. We have the Department of Agriculture and Markets committed to supporting environmental sustainability. We have an incredible technical assistance and support network through soil and water conservation districts and extension and nonprofits working across the state. And we have cutting-edge research at Cornell Cows and throughout the state. And then we have our state government leaders in the legislature working to pass legislation like this. If passed, this bill is a critical first step to bringing all these efforts together and augmenting them to the benefit of us all. I want to thank Senator Hinchey, Assemblywoman Lupardo, and Assemblywoman Barrett for their vision, determination, and leadership in this effort. Celebrate the Assembly for passing this bill already, and encourage the Senate to pass the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act this year before June 10th to take this critical step forward. And AFT stands at the ready to work alongside our farmers, our partner organizations, and others to successfully implement this act and improve soil health across the state. Thank you.
Wonderful. And next, I would like to introduce Peter Iwanowitz, the Executive Director of Environmental Advocates of New York.
Good day, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Senators, Assemblywomen. It's great honor to be here. Peter Iwanowitz with Environmental Advocates, and why? We are in a climate crisis. I hope that there aren't any folks that deny that here. It's no longer a threat. The impacts are being experienced now. The costs of climate change are enormous. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation estimates that for each ton of carbon dioxide pollution that's belched out, the costs are $125 per ton. So let me put that in context for you. Based on our annual emissions here in New York State, the cost to New Yorkers for what we're emitting today is $27.5 billion in climate costs. Let me just say that again. $27.5 billion in costs that are accruing every single year to New Yorkers because our climate is changing. Ensuring soil health is the foundation to climate-friendly smart farming. Adopting optimal irrigation strategies and supporting and maintaining diverse ecosystems will increase productivity, protect our natural resources, and for sure, as you've heard already today, ensure climate resiliency. I also want to just mention that I'm one of the 22 members of the New York State Climate Action Council, and on behalf of myself and that council, I would really just like to say thanks for legislating and moving things forward and not waiting for the council to come up with this plan. We have 9.5 years to achieve a cut of climate pollution by law of 40%. So by 2030, we have to have nearly cut our climate change emissions that we're belching up today in half. That clock is ticking loudly, and that clock is coming at us fast. So I'm really happy that legislators are stepping up and moving forward and legislating and not waiting for 2030 to act. Your leadership and boldness is really to be commended. So thank you, all of you here today that have moved this bill forward. We applaud the sponsors, obviously Senator Michelle Hinchey, Assemblymember Donna Lupardo, and the leadership of Dee Dee Barrett for moving this legislation forward over the years. And we really look forward, all of us at Environmental Advocates and my colleagues here today, look forward to working with them for getting this bill passed and signed into law soon by this governor. So thank you very much.
And finally, I would like to introduce Crystal Stewart Cortons, who is the board president of the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New York, who also happens to be the owner and operator of Philia Farm in Johnstown, New York.
Thank you all so very much. It's an honor to be here, and it's a pleasure to be here as a farmer. I'm going to be speaking to a lot of the same issues that everybody else has, but of course we're coming at this from a very personal place as farmers. I'm pretty sure I actually brought some soil with me today somewhere on my body, so this is something that we're in contact with all the time, and I can't tell you how important it is personally to feel like this is a priority here in New York State. So NOFA New York is proud to be standing here today with our many partners in support of the Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act. Organic agriculture is rooted in the health of the soil, and NOFA has worked since 1983 to build ecological integrity of our soil, one of the state's most important building blocks for our existence. We want to express our gratitude to Assemblywoman Lupardo, Senator Hinchey, and Assemblywoman Barrett for their leadership in passing this historic legislation. There are few issues that attract unanimous bipartisan acclaim and bring together such a broad coalition of New York State agriculture. Building soil health is a win-win-win for our state, our people, and our land. The Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act takes whole farm systems approaches to providing payments and technical assistance to farmers who implement or continue to maintain practices that build healthy soils and sequester carbon. This bill will serve as a touchstone to encourage farmers who have been nurturing soil health, as well as those who are now turning their attention and learning new practices that improve degraded soils across the state. As farmer experience demonstrates and science confirms, the soils that contain more carbon will increase the nutrient density of our crops, improve farm viability, increase water infiltration and holding capacity, which of course helps with climate change, and reduce erosion and runoff. These important ecosystem services help mitigate the effects of climate change and at the same time save taxpayers money through improved water quality and reduced costs for stormwater control. Soil health practices this bill promotes will increase biodiversity above and below ground, strengthen the resilience of our farms to the impacts of climate change while providing greater food security based on prosperous, resilient farms as anchors of rural development and of urban well-being. In New York, we are fortunate that we already have the framework for this soil health initiative within existing state and federal agencies. Our land-grant institutions are not-for-profit organizations. This bill builds on the existing framework and adds to the coordination and public recognition that will bring more resources. NOFA New York looks forward to continuing the productive cooperation that we have all enjoyed this year and in getting this bill passed. Together, we can bring soil health to all of New York State, public and private lands included. The Soil Health and Climate Resiliency Act launches a new culture of soil care, a watershed moment in the New York history of food and farming. So thank you very much.
Excuse me, folks. I was remiss in not acknowledging Ms. Buttonshaw, Assemblymember Buttonshaw. She's one of the few Assemblymember farmers that we have, and I just want to thank her for her leadership and all things agriculture and for her efforts on this bill as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Peter said it, and we all know it. We are living right now in a climate crisis, and our farmers are on the front lines of dealing with that and of helping the rest of us deal with that and come to a place where we can continue to thrive on this planet. And so this bill is tremendously important, and all the work that the advocates and that the organizations and that my colleagues have done in this space and will continue to do in this space is so profoundly important in helping us across the board. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and for speaking on the critical importance of this legislation. The purpose of this bill is to recognize in state law the vital role that soil health and our farmers play in the fight against climate change. With this legislation, we are taking action to safeguard our food supply from extreme weather events, protect our drinking water from pollution sources, and build healthier soils that store carbon and reduce our emissions. As we've said, this bill has already passed the Assembly, and I'm very excited. It looks like this bill should be coming to the floor in the Senate really any day now. So we will continue to look out for that. And next on is making sure that the governor signs it as soon as we're able to pass it in our House, because this bill is critical to get done quickly. So with that, thank you everyone for coming, and happy to take any questions, if there are any.
Sure. So the question is our soil unhealthy? I wouldn't say that. I would say this is more about maintaining and building soil health, and that we are recognizing that some of the practices, especially in agriculture, but in other aspects too, have the potential to degrade soils, and that we also have the potential to improve soils. So if we can incentivize improving soils over degrading them, then we're going to be moving upward rather than maintaining or slipping downward in our soil health. Yeah.
At this point, this first step, we're aiming to have the department begin to issue guidance and training materials and information for farmers who want to do better in this area. I mean, when you asked the earlier question, some farmers have thoroughly embraced this and others have not. It's a learning experience. So again, this first step is to try to get everyone focused on it. I don't have the bill in front of me, so I couldn't tell you what deadline they have. There's no enforcement at this point. Again, the premise is this is important, and we're making that statement in a pretty big way and participating with all of our environmental advocates in this measure. But we can get back to you on the date. Sure, but let me just say, I mean, step one is to get everyone on the same page on how we define soil health. So it's difficult to establish robust funding opportunities and incentives if we haven't at all at least agreed on what it is we're trying to accomplish. So that's the step. The step is to put us in that position so that we can, through subsequent budgets and policy initiatives, further develop this. That's the goal with that. But
let me just say the carbon farming pilot, the Hudson Valley carbon farming pilot, which got a little bit of a slow start because of COVID, really launched last fall, so it's in the midst of its first year. And part of what we're hoping to gain from that is to see the impact of these kinds of priorities on our farms. And we've got a range of different kinds of farms in our Hudson Valley pilot. It's 5 different counties. It's dairy farms, it's fruit farms, it's black dirt farms in Orange County, and onions, and I mean it's the entire mix. And so the idea is to use this pilot as a opportunity to capture the kind of information that can then go on and figure out how to incentivize and encourage more of these practices going forward. So. Yeah, and the soil and water districts are actually running the pilot, so they're in constant communication with the farmers. I mean, there are many farmers who have been following these are time-honored practices that go back to the early days of agriculture in our state. And many who are very much engaged in these, and others that are wait and see, and there's a lot of conversations going on, and I think that's healthy as well as the soils here.
Just to add a little context to what we're discussing, in 2018, Sinek Hudson commissioned a study that engaged 200 agriculturalists, extension experts, and farm educators in the Hudson Valley. The result of that social science research found that farmers adopt practices when they learn from other farmers. That peer-to-peer networking is probably one of the most effective tools that we have, where you can really get people on the ground talking about what they do, what they're farming, and how these practices relate. So one of the great things about this bill is it sets up a kind of a collaborative research partnership with diverse stakeholders, farmers, academics, and others who can come together and share that information and really provide the template so we can take this literally into the field and create that peer-to-peer learning in a stronger way.